for being here. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Amy Pierson, the wife of Officer Daryl Pierson, in the room today. What I'm going to do is give a brief factual synopsis of what occurred yesterday, after which District Attorney Sandra DOORLEY will explain to you the court proceedings that will be following. As you know, this occurred Wednesday, September 3rd, yesterday. At approximately 9:19 p.m., RPD tactical officers stopped the vehicle. When they first observed the vehicle, it contained 2 people. However, when they stopped it, there was only 1 person in the vehicle. At about 9:20 p.m., Officer DiPaolo and Officer Pierson arrived as backup officers for this vehicle stop. At 9:22 p.m., Officer DiPaolo and Officer Pierson began to search the area for the second individual who had been observed in the vehicle. At this time, Officer DiPaolo was driving the vehicle and Officer Pierson was the passenger. At about 9:25 p.m., Officer DiPaolo and Officer Pierson observed an individual matching the description of the second occupant of the vehicle. Officer Pierson exited the police vehicle and approached the person who matched the description. This individual immediately fled on foot southbound on Hudson Avenue. Officer Pierson pursued this individual on foot while Officer DiPaolo turned the police vehicle around to assist in the pursuit. Officer Pierson caught up to the suspect at Hudson Avenue and Agnes Street. At that point, the suspect shot Officer Pierson 1 time with a .25 caliber handgun. This wound ultimately proved to be fatal. At that time, Officer Pierson and the suspect both fell to the ground. As they fell, the suspect's .25 caliber handgun discharged a second time. We believe the second shot from the suspect's handgun struck an innocent bystander, Jamal Bowler, 24 years of age, causing a serious but non-life-threatening injury. The suspect then got up and continued to flee on foot. By that time, Officer DiPaolo exited the police vehicle and pursued the suspect. As the suspect was running, he turned to fire his weapon at Officer DiPaolo. At that point, Officer DiPaolo then fired 1 round at the suspect with his RPD-issued handgun. Officer DiPaolo's shot struck the suspect, causing a non-life-threatening injury. Officer DiPaolo then apprehended the suspect. At about this point, other RPD officers arrived on the scene and then placed Officer Pierson in a police vehicle and transported him to Rochester General Hospital. Officer Pierson was pronounced by the Rochester General medical staff at 10:45 p.m. Both the suspect and Mr. Bowler were transported to Strong Memorial Hospital for treatment. Bowler was treated and released. The suspect underwent surgery at Strong Memorial Hospital and is currently admitted to the hospital under police guard. The suspect has been identified as Thomas Johnson III, a male, 38 years of age. We later determined that Mr. Johnson has an outstanding parole warrant. Now I'm going to turn this over to District Attorney Sandra DOORLEY. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you everyone for being here. And before I start, Mrs. Pierson, my heart goes out to you and your family. And as you can see around this room, you have a tremendous family in law enforcement, and they will be with you to support you throughout this entire process. At 4:51 p.m., a felony complaint was filed in Rochester City Court against Thomas Johnson III. There are 8 counts in the felony complaint. I will simply read them to you. The first count is aggravated murder, and that is in violation of Penal Law Section 125.26. The second count is attempted aggravated murder. The third, fourth, and fifth counts are 3 separate counts of assault in the first degree under 3 separate theories for the injuries sustained by Jamel Bowler. The last 3 counts are 3 separate counts of criminal possession of a weapon in the second and third degree. It is alleged during the crime that the defendant had an armed firearm which was defaced, and he had a prior conviction which prohibited him from having the firearm. After we proceed with this press conference today, we're going to go over to Strong Memorial Hospital, and Mr. Johnson is going to be arraigned on the felony complaint. At that point, I believe he will be entering a plea of not guilty. The matter will be set down for a preliminary hearing. It's the intention of the Monroe County Grand Jury, the Monroe County DA's office, to present this case to a Monroe County Grand Jury prior to the preliminary hearing date. I do have a copy of the felony complaint, and I will provide it to anyone in the media, but I'm going to do that only after Mr. Johnson has been arraigned at Strong Memorial Hospital. There's been an allegation that there are prior convictions, and I can tell you a little bit about Mr. Johnson. Again, his date of birth is 2/24/1976. His latest felony conviction was from 2001, and it was attempted robbery in the second degree, where he was sentenced to a 3-year term in the New York State Department of Corrections with 5 years post-release. When he was released on that sentence, we've learned that he was violated on parole. He was returned to the Department of Corrections and was since released to our community. His maximum expiration date, according to the Division of Parole, would have been December 23rd of 2018. He also has prior misdemeanors that occurred within Monroe County. But interestingly, from the state of Florida, he has a charge for battery on a police officer, and we are looking into that offense. Those are the charges that will be contained in the felony complaint, the 8 charges. That's a little bit about Mr. Johnson's history. And again, we'll be able to provide a felony complaint once he has been arraigned at Strong Memorial Hospital. And again, my heart goes out to the Pierson family, and again to the wonderful members of the Rochester law enforcement community. You know, the moment that this crime occurred last night, right after 9 o'clock, every member of law enforcement from throughout Monroe County was there to support the Rochester Police Department and provide whatever aid they could. And as a result, we have a suspect in custody, and we're going to be able to pursue this prosecution. I can tell you, as charged now in the felony complaint, if Mr. Johnson is convicted of each and every offense, he is looking at the possibility of life without parole. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, myself and the district attorney will take a few questions and try to answer them if we can.
Sandra, can I ask
Sure.
you a question? You said the attempted robbery was 2001.
I'm sorry, the attempted robbery, 2011?
2011. Okay.
2011.
He was originally charged with robbery second, displaying a firearm. Can you explain why he was able to plead to an attempted robbery and make that a D felony?
And you know what, I looked at the file before I came to the press conference today, and I am ordering the transcript. It does look like it was scheduled for a Huntley hearing before Judge Geraci when he was here in county court, and something happened, and I'm not really quite sure what happened, but he had pled guilty to the attempted robbery in the second degree at that time, a waiver of appeal, and he was sentenced to the 3 years in the New York State Department of Corrections.
Would there be any explanation as to why that was allowed to happen, considering his felony arrests and convictions in Florida?
Yeah. At this point, I'm looking into it, Berkeley.
Sandra, should he have been out on the streets, this man?
Well, you know, get back to how do you calculate how much time someone does on a determinate sentence? It looked like he was released from the Department of Corrections less than the 3 years of the determinate sentence. While he was out, there was a parole violation. He was again returned to the New York State Department of Correction, and I believe he was released sometime in August of this year.
But what's your opinion on that?
You know, I think if someone is sentenced to 3 years and that's what a judge issues, then that person should be serving every moment of those 3 years.
Two quick questions.
Yes.
Can you explain what the initial traffic stop was for?
In this particular case, I don't want to really go into the evidence or the investigation at this time.
Were they speeding? additional red
Yeah,
light.
at this point, I'm not going to answer that.
And the other person in the car, can you talk about what happened to that other person?
Again, it's still a pending investigation. Thank you.
Can you clarify if this was at least if this was a routine traffic stop, like violating any traffic, or were you looking for this particular individual?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not going to comment. Yeah. Yes, Gary?
Can you say what he had done that while he was on parole now that he was being sought for? Was he being sought for something parole-related now also?
The information that we have right now, there was a warrant out as being a parole absconder, which means he wasn't reporting back to parole and wasn't where he should have been.
And just backing up to the earlier armed robbery, and I may be wrong, but did he have a gun, or did it actually just he had his hand in his pocket, and when he was chased down, there was no gun? You know?
The allegation was that he displays what appears to be, reading the paperwork, it does appear that he may have had his hand mimicking a gun in his pocket. A gun was not found or recovered during that 2011 investigation.
Was a gun found and recovered at the scene last night?
Yes, we recovered a .25 caliber handgun at the scene. Casings, at the time the gun was recovered, it was still loaded with live rounds.
Can you talk about how many?
No.
Was it a legal handgun?
Well, as I can say this, as a convicted felon, he could not legally possess a handgun in the state of New York.
Chief, we saw investigators search the house at the corner of Warsaw and Hudson. Could you tell us the significance of that home there?
I'm not going to comment on that now.
Chief, did the suspect fire at both officers, and did he fire first before the officer returned fire?
Well, at this point, we believe 2 shots were fired from the suspect's .25 caliber handgun. The first shot struck Officer Pierson. We believe the second shot struck the innocent bystander.
Chief, did Officer Pierson ever fire a shot?
Officer Pierson never had the opportunity to draw his weapon and did not fire a shot.
Yes, Chief, and after the second shot, the first one hit Officer Pierson, that's when his partner shot.
Well, within seconds, as I said, both Officer Pierson and the suspect fell to the ground after the first shot. As they fell to the ground, the second shot was discharged. The suspect got up and continued to run, attempting to flee. By that point, Officer DiPaolo had exited his vehicle and began to pursue on foot. Yes. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Officer DiPaolo shot.
Officer DiPaolo fired 1 shot at the suspect, striking him, causing non-life-threatening injuries, at which point Officer DiPaolo was able to take him into custody. Yes, sir.
Coming back to the earlier shot, so you said he dropped the gun, and or he fell with the gun and it discharged?
Didn't say he dropped the gun.
That's right. So he fell with the gun and it discharged, my apologies.
Yes.
Were they close, or was that just falling because they were in pursuit, or what?
I'm not going to speculate as to why they fell. Based on the evidence we have, we believe both Officer Pierson, Officer Pierson and the suspect fell to the ground after the first shot was discharged.
Do you know how close they were when the suspect fired the first shot at officers?
They were in close proximity.
Are you able to say where Officer Pierson was hit?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Are you able to say where the suspect was hit?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Chief, you have an outstanding amount of support here. I know you've probably gotten it from across the country. Can you go into what happens next, what kind of support you have, and what's the police plan to do going forward?
Well, of course, our primary concern and focus now is for Amy and her family and Officer Pierson's loved ones. So we will do everything we can to support them, to help them, to be with them. We will take care of our own police officer family in this law enforcement community. We will be in the process of making plans to go forward to give this hero a fitting service as befits his courageous act of sacrifice. So I know you're all interested in that. As you can imagine, we've been very much focused on this investigation and bringing it to a successful conclusion. We still have much work to do on the investigation. The District Attorney's Office, who has been with us side by side here, has much work to do. But really, as we leave now, a number of us on the command staff will be now going to starting to focus on what comes next, and we will get that information out.
Will some of that, Chief, include review in terms of seeing what can be done to make sure that this does not happen again the next time an incident arises?
Anytime we have a critical incident, when the investigation is done and the facts are in, we always review it. We will do an after-action review. We will look at this situation from beginning to end, and if there's any lessons to be learned from that, we will learn them, and we will incorporate that into our policies and training.
Chief, can you discuss, obviously this man was working under you, can you express your feelings and tell us what's going through your mind right now?
Well, this is a day that no chief ever wants to face. And right now, my job is to stay focused on my job, to lead this department, this wonderful department, and these wonderful police officers, and forward to do what we have to do. So I'll have time for some personal reflection later.
Chief, this is the second time in just a couple weeks that we've had someone on parole commit a violent crime in Rochester. Is there something that needs to be done here? Is there a breakdown in the system that needs to be
Well, I think the mayor addressed that earlier. Certainly, I think what you just said speaks for itself and bears some very close scrutiny. Okay, thank you very much.